good afternoon, and welcome to the garden. Welcome to Garden Conversations with Rose. Folks, friends, family members, anyone out there who's listening to me, I am on vacation. I'm on vacation. It's the commencement of my summer break. Isn't that an extraordinarily enticing and happy feeling? Of course it is. But of course, I have had to give up 3 of my 9 weeks for summer school. But never mind that. I am grateful that I'm on vacation. So, I've always thought it rather interesting that someone like Michael Jackson was so agile and so versatile and extraordinarily talented. I had a chance to see a little clip of him this morning. And as I looked at his moves and even listened to him sing and the impact he had on the crowd, I thought, wow, this man had so much influence. And I also thought about two other artists, Whitney Houston and Prince. And the reason why I thought of those artists, because in my earlier years, they were the ones whose songs I listened to quite a bit and actually liked a lot of their songs. So Michael Jackson to some degree, Prince, and of course Whitney Houston, among others, of course, but those three. So they were famous, they were well known, they were certainly talented, and they had a lot of impact on millions and even, I dare say, billions of people worldwide. And of course, they had the money to go with it. They had their big homes, the jewelry, and, and so on. But something struck me that all three of them met their demise in a most unfortunate and heartbreaking manner. All three of those singers and famous artists OD'd, they overdosed on a drug. So, whether it would have been a pharmaceutical drug or an illegal substance, their life ended sadly in that manner. And as I thought more and more of it, I thought there must have been something that was missing from their lives that could have caused them to go down that way. It was something that they were dependent on for so long. Every time something went awry, they needed that crutch. And that crutch, unfortunately, was a drug. And I thought, after all of that fame and all of that money and all of that influence, their life ended so badly. And I'm thinking, those three persons seem to have an issue with a real deep sense of peace. I also thought that perhaps they also didn't quite have a grip on their true sense of self. And thirdly, somehow there seemed to have been absent from their lives a real sense of contentment and joy. And as I tied in those three, I thought of something that I saw last year, to which I later made a post entitled Frilly Grass. And I looked at the grassy pattern on the roadside as I waited for the bus, and it was so unusual. And I thought frilly grass. But of course, grass is grass, and so eventually grass would have to be chopped away, grass would dry and wither, grass would be stepped on and muddied, and eventually thrown out. And I thought of laces and flounces and braids added to fabric or to garments, and they look quite nice. But after all, if that garment is cut in a nail, or even if it is washed too harshly, it is very easy for all of that to go away and the garment would not be as nice as it would be. So, as I think of all of that, I'm thinking in our lives, it doesn't matter how much fame we have. What seems to be most important is whether or not we have a deep sense of peace, a true sense of self, and a contentment and joy. And I'm thinking we are 3 days away from closing off the month of June, which marks the final month of the first half of 2021. And we are about to get into July, beginning the second half and beyond. So I'd just like to encourage you today as you go forward. Doesn't matter what might have gone on before. As you move forward into that second half, to steady yourself, I need to encourage you to not think of things that are inconsequential, but think of things that have substance. And so we're going to focus today on ensuring that we maintain and even begin to have a deep sense of peace. So of course, as I've always said, a sense of peace is paramount, is vital, is important. So in order to achieve that sense of peace, it may be necessary to cut off a few things. You know what causes you to go off the edge, what gives you a little angst. We may need to do some discernment and learn to leave some things alone in order to achieve our deep sense of peace. We also need to know where we can go in order for our sense of peace to be achieved and maintained. That is so important. Whatever went on, as I said before, whatever has gone on in the first 6 months, it isn't too late to start a new page. So if you have to cut off some things, some people, do just that. If you have to learn to choose your battles, do just that. If you have to include some persons or some activities or some things, a place where you can go, do that in order to achieve your sense of peace. And even as you continue on with your sense of peace, you must know your sense of self. You must understand who you really are. Are you what others think you are? What the peers that you hang out with think you are? What the persons in your community think you are? Or even what you have been told from youth, or even now, because you would have made an error and they think that's what you are? Or are you thinking of those negative thoughts that may come up and plague your mind, that's who you are? I dare say to you, that isn't who you are. You are a much stronger and deeper being, created fearlessly, fearfully, and wonderfully created by God. He created you. So you need to know your true sense of self. Because after all, your worth and your value comes from Him. It comes from how He looks at you. So you now need to walk into that. Walk into it. Never mind the errors you would have made. You can get out of that and walk into your royalness as He ought to have you walk. And then, as you move on, knowing your true sense of self, being at that place of peace, I urge you and encourage you to ensure that your sense of contentment and joy is on point. And when I say contentment, I'm not saying at all that you must settle for less and just take anything. I'm just saying there are some things that you may think may be necessary for you to have, which just aren't necessary. So maybe that special bit of clothing, that gadget, or that special recognition, whatever it is, and that you are simply not content. Or even if you can't have your own way because you always see things being done a particular way and you are just not content, there are some things you just need to just dismiss. You need to bring about a sense of contentment within yourself. And again, I'm not saying that you ought to settle and don't try to move ahead and improve yourself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, in order to be content, to be settled, to be in a warm place, there are some things that you don't necessarily need to have. And above all, that bit of joy, and not just a fleeting happiness or a one-time moment of pleasure that comes from a situation. A deep sense of joy that doesn't matter what is going on in your life, that you have joy. You are settled in yourself, that nothing can disturb you. So I urge you today to remember we're closing off the final month of the first half and we're about to enter into the second half. As you do that, remember what's important: your strong sense of peace, your real true sense of self, and a sense of contentment and joy. Have a lovely, lovely Sunday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and of course, do have a productive and blessed work week. I'm on vacation, so I don't need to worry about that until, of course, later in July when I go to summer school. Bye bye, and thank you for joining me in the garden.